Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Gana.
Jaya Jaya Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vyana.
Shakti Deha Kore Yena Chaitanya Varnana.
Shakti Deha Karayena Chaitanya Varnana.
Jaya Jaya Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Gana.
Jaya Jaya Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Gana.
Shakti Deha Kore Yena Chaitanya Varnana.
Shakti Deha Karayena Chaitanya Varnana.
Om Jnanatirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschate Shatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome to the devotees who have also joined online. Nandini Rupa Mataji, Madhuri Gopi Mataji, Alka Mataji, Ashish Prabhu, Radhika Dhir Mataji and Radha Mataji. Hare Krishna, welcome. So in the last session, we concluded our discussion of chapter 5, the glories of Lord Nityananda Balaram. And in that chapter, we covered the 5 Mangala Charan verses that glorify the identity, the purpose, and the potency of Lord Nityananda. So those verses are verses 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11 of the first chapter. So we saw that how Kaviraj Goswami brilliantly, with so much reference from scripture, he kind of explained in so much detail what is the identity of Lord Nityananda and what is his potency. And he did that in the most remarkable way, explaining that how Lord Nityananda, he is Balaram himself, and he personally assists Krishna in his pastimes. And at the same time, he expands into, Sankarshan, right, the Chaturvyuha. And from there, he expands further, right, into the Purusha avatars, and then Ananta Shesh. And each one, their potency is described. And after describing what they actually do, right, and what a important role they play in this creation and also the spiritual world, right, the Chaturvyuha, their role is in the spiritual world. And how doing so many incredible things, expanding in the form of Mahavishnu, Mahavishnu expanding in the form of Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, Garbhodakshayi Vishnu expanding in the form of Shiradakshayi Vishnu, and he expanding in the form of Ananta Sesh. And each one's glories are unlimited, and their services are unlimited, beyond the comprehension of mortal souls like us. And those entities, right, or those powerful representations of God, right, manifestations of God, expansions of God, they are but a partial expansion of whom? Of Lord Nityananda. So after describing each one, he glorifies Lord Nityananda by saying, do you know who these are? These are but a partial expansion of that Supreme Lord Sri Nityananda. And despite having these inconceivable credentials, right, abilities, potencies, expansions, one of the main things that we see in this chapter, right after all this description, let's look at verse number 134 of this chapter 5. And we're going to recite this verse, because this is the essential mentality of Lord Nityananda. And not only that, this is going to be the essential mentality of Sri Advaita Acharya. And this is the essential mentality of all the confidential associates of Lord Krishna. So this verse says, Ei Rupe Nityananda Ananta Prakasha,
Ei Rupe Nityananda Ananta Prakasha,
Shei Bhave Kohe Muni Chaitanya dāsā.
Sei Bhave Kahe Muni Chaitanya dāsā.
So after describing all his amazing manifestations, Kaviraj Goswami says, thus Lord Nityananda has unlimited incarnations. Imagine someone with such ability and potency, and such standing. But what's his mindset? In transcendental emotion, he calls himself a servant, Muni Chaitanya Das. And in 137, again Kaviraj Goswami, he explains so beautifully, Apna ke bhritta kori Krishna Prabhu jane,
Apna ke bhritta kari Krishna Prabhu jane,
Krishna ra kala apna ke mane.
Krishna kala kala apna ke mane.
He considers himself a servant and knows Krishna to be his master. Thus he regards himself as a fragment of his plenary portion. Although he is Krishna himself, he is a counter form of Krishna, but how does he perceive himself? Not only as a servant, he regards himself, he says, Krishnera kalara kala apana ke mane. So he considers himself as a fragment of his plenary portion. This is the amazing mentality of the representation of the Guru. As I said last time, that what does Guru mean? He's the greatest servant. And Lord Balaram, by his example, he shows what Guru means. Means to be the most humble, supreme servant of the Lord. And this is very, very important for us to take away. I don't know, some of you heard Gauranga Prabhu's lecture on Nityananda Tirodashi in Sector 45. And one of the things he kept emphasizing, so Prabhupada, when he gave initiation to some of the devotees, so he emphasized to them that your real name is what? Not the first part, but the second part. Das. So he gave the example of Hamsaduta Prabhu. So he was very, very, his name was Hans Kare, right, before he got initiated. And he was super keen to get a very, very spiritual name from Srila Prabhupada. And he thought that, he'll get some really nice spiritual name. So Prabhupada gave him Hamsaduta Das. Right? Hamsaduta Adhikari. So Kare became Adhikari. And his name Hans became Hamsaduta. So he was like, he thought it is so similar to his legal name, he wasn't so happy about the name. So then Prabhupada told him that, the more important part of your name is Das. So that's a wonderful reminder, and this is the mentality of Lord Nityananda. We may think, I'm Nitai dāsā. Ooh, I'm Nitai. But that's being in super Maya. So we are trying to be the servant of Lord Nityananda. And the more we can identify like that, then we will see that our spiritual life will blossom. I remember once my Guru Maharaj wrote me a letter. This was way back in 1998. And I was in Dallas, Texas. And, I was writing to him every 2 months. I had just met him a few months ago, and then I started writing to him in 1998. And he said that it is good that you are identifying. It seems you're more and more identifying yourself as a devotee of the Lord, as a servant of the Lord. So he said this will do you this will do you a lot of good. So just reminding of the same principle that our Krishna conscious journey or our progress in Krishna consciousness, how do we understand that we are progressing in Krishna consciousness? So one of the ways is that how strongly we are identifying ourselves as the servant of Sri Gaur Nitai. So the stronger the identification, that means that this process is effectively working in our lives. And this is going to be the theme of chapter 6, which we're going to start today. And he's going to develop this theme in a deeper level. He's going to go deeper. He's given a hint. He's given a few verses in chapter 5. Chapter 5 has more than 250 verses. Sorry, I think it has 235 verses. And in that we got a few verses. But in this chapter 6, he's going to really unfold the meaning of what it means to be the servant of the servant, the position of that, and the incredible joy that is accessible in being in that position. So I remember when I first read the chapter, because the first 30 verses are again about his identity and being the expansion of Mahavishnu. So I would read like the first 20 verses and I'd skip the chapter. Because it was like, again, Mahavishnu, Nimitta Karan, Upadan Karan, all this. I'm thinking like, okay, let's skip this chapter. Let's go to the next one. And honestly, I skipped it a few times. And then during COVID, I read this chapter again. I thought this time I have to break this barrier and go past these 30 verses. And when I went past those 30 verses, I was amazed at the sweetness that is there in this chapter. It's so super sweet once you get to the first 30 verses, that I thought, my God, that I really denied myself all these years. It was, living in denial. So Prabhupada begins this chapter with an amazing synopsis right in the beginning. So he gives a summary of this chapter, and he says that the truth of Advaita Acharya has been described in 2 verses. It is said that material nature has 2 features, namely the material cause and the efficient cause. I hope everyone is familiar with what is the material cause and what is the efficient cause. So please look at the notes I sent you. I sent you a 3-minute recording. Just listen to that a couple of times, it will become clear. Basically, in the creation of a pot, right, or any creation, there are 2 causes. One is the material cause, that means the ingredients that go into that creation. So that's called the material cause or the ingredient cause, and in Sanskrit it's called the Upadan cause. And then there is the potency or the Shakti, the personal involvement in that creation. And that is called the immediate cause or the efficient cause or the Nimitta Karan in Sanskrit. So in the case of a creation of a pot, so we have a potter and then the wheel. Those are the Nimitta Karan. They're involved in the creation of the pot. The potter is the primary Nimitta Karan and the wheel is the secondary Nimitta Karan. And the ingredient cause or the material cause is the clay. So the primary ingredient cause is the clay and the secondary ingredient cause is the water. Similarly, in the creation of this cosmic manifestation, this material world, we have a Nimitta Karan and we have the material cause. The material cause, again, it has a primary cause and a secondary cause. So who's the primary cause? Mahavishnu. And who's the secondary cause? Material cause, material. Think of material. Pradhan. Okay. Sometimes it's also said Prakriti. Right? So Pradhan. Prakriti is when it becomes active. So Pradhan is the secondary material or ingredient or nimit or upadan karan. Okay. And when we look at the primary immediate cause, Mahavishnu. And the secondary immediate cause, Maya Shakti. Okay. So you listen to that recording, those who still are not clear. Some of you seem to be very clear, and I'm very happy that you heard that description, and it's become more clear to everyone. Because, these Purusha avatars, this terminology, it's repeated throughout our scriptures. Whenever there is a description about the potency of God and this material world, the description of the Purusha avatars always comes. You see in the Bhagavatam, right in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, there's a description. Then, throughout the Bhagavatam, there are further detailed descriptions. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, every discussion, philosophical discussion about the Lord and His potencies, there's always a description of the Purusha avatars. Why? Why is that important for us? Just think, why is that important for us?
So that we can learn from their pastimes.
Okay, and what can we learn?
Shows the greatness and magnanimity of the Lord. I mean, how great He is and how through His energies He is doing all this.
Okay, yeah, this is very good. That it gives us a sense of the greatness of God. But more specifically, what does it do? Especially in terms of the Purusha avatars. Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Shirodakshay Vishnu.
He governs the whole system.
Yes, they're governing the system that we're all living in.
It maybe tells us who is the primary creator, primary maintainer, primary destroyer.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that it tells us, but what does that information mean for us practically? On a personal level, what does it mean? It should mean, it's not okay, I know Mahavishnu is he's the efficient cause and he's also the, primary material cause. Okay, that's theory. But what does that mean?
It means that we are not the controller, and there is someone on top of us who is controlling us, always reminding us.
Yes. And everything in this world that we experience is their mercy. There's nothing separate from them. Every universe, there's Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Brahmaji comes out. From Brahmaji, creation takes place, progeny and then Shirodakshay Vishnu is in every atom. So everything that we see, we experience, we touch, has the presence of the Lord. So scripture is not just, just memorizing some verses and understanding, okay, I know this table and I know this chart and I know the flow. Scripture has to go inside our hearts. So all this explanation is to bring us to our senses and deepen our awareness of the presence of the Lord in everything that is there in this world and beyond. Then the scripture is becoming alive for us. Otherwise it's theory. So the idea is when we read all this, it is to help deepen our awareness and the presence of God in our personal life, in the personal, our vision. How do we see things? So just knowing the technicalities or knowing the definitions, that's good, that's required. But ultimately, that is to help us go much deeper and feel the presence of God on a moment-to-moment basis. And the more we read and the more we deeply contemplate these eternal truths, then you'll be amazed at how powerful this knowledge is in transforming our consciousness. Then only the consciousness become transformed. When we deeply contemplate what we are hearing, what we are analyzing, what we are memorizing. And then that mindset of the servant will become a deeply ingrained part of our consciousness. Otherwise, it'll all remain on the surface. So he says something really amazing in this. He says that the material nature has two features, namely the material cause and the efficient cause. The efficient causal activities are caused by Mahavishnu, and the material causal activities are caused by another form of Mahavishnu known as Advaita. Here's a further detail. So when we said that Mahavishnu is the primary efficient cause and also the primary material cause. So the primary material cause is the form of Mahavishnu called Advaita. So Mahavishnu has two forms. I don't know, he may have more forms, but two are being revealed here. He may have further expansions. We don't know. So his expansion to take care of the creative side of creation, dealing with the pradhan, and out of that churning out so many different varieties of manifestations. So that is the work of whom? Advaita Acharya. Okay, Advaita. That Advaita, the superintendent of cosmic manifestation, has descended in the form of Advaita Acharya to associate with Lord Chaitanya. Okay. And now, the real point that Prabhupada is making here. When he is addressed as the servitor of Lord Chaitanya, his glories are magnified because unless one is invigorated by the mentality of servitorship, one cannot understand the mellows derived from devotional service to the Supreme Lord Krishna. This is a very, very important statement. So I'll repeat that so that this becomes more clear to everyone. Now you all hear it properly because I'm going to ask you questions. When he is addressed as the servitor of Lord Chaitanya, his glories are magnified because unless one is invigorated by this mentality of servitorship, one cannot understand the mellows derived from devotional service to the Supreme Lord Krishna. Now some of you try to explain this to me.
Unless someone cultivates that quality of servitude, so he will not be able to enjoy the real joy of Krishna consciousness.
Very nice. So he will not be able to taste the ras or the mellows of Krishna consciousness unless one imbibes this spirit of servitude. And we will see later on in this chapter that servitude is an essential ras of all the other rasas. So in Dasya ras, of course, this is the predominant feature. But when we move to even Sakhya ras, what happens? Is a ras of servitude gone? Is it all about friendship and having a good time? No, that stays. And when we get into Vatsalya ras, does that stay? Yeah, it stays. And when it gets to Madhurya ras, does it stay? Yes, it stays. So this,
Truly, I think that is the definition of love. When you love someone, you always want to serve in some way or another.
yes. So bhakti is what? They're loving relationships. And in loving relationships, this feature of being the servant has to be there. And this is why what happens in mundane relationships, why do mundane relationships many times fail miserably? Why?
Try to become master.
Yeah. Because the tendency is that I am the master, I am the enjoyer. And if two people start thinking like that, then what happens?
Blast.
You have a nice, beautiful relationship that falls crashing. Huh? Yes. You have ugly outcomes. The more that mentality of being the enjoyer and being the controller becomes stronger, the less chances are that relationship will survive.
Even to appreciate someone's service, a spiritual element is required. Otherwise, someone thinks that I am so great, that I am so service.
So pride is very, very subtle. So this is the key takeaway from this chapter, and it's going to be explained in the most amazing way. Like the way he explains this later on, when we get past the 30 verses, then you really relish, the brilliance and the sweetness of Kaviraj Goswami's description. It's just totally out of the world. How he brings out and he churns this point. So this chapter begins with Kaviraj Goswami offering his respectful obeisances to Advaitacharya. And he says his activities are all wonderful. And by his mercy, even a foolish person can describe his characteristics. He says that he has already described the principle of Lord Nityananda in 5 verses. And now in the next 2 verses, he is going to describe the glories of Advaitacharya. So in verse number 4 and verse number 5, these are the 2 Mangala Charan verses from chapter 1, and which form the basis of the discussion in this chapter. So whatever he's going to describe is an elaboration of these 2 verses. So we will cover, so when we cover these 2 verses, we would have covered how many Mangala Charan verses?
11.
Yes, we're going to cover 12 and 13. That means how many will we have left?
1.
We'll have 1 more left. That will take place in chapter 7. Okay. So let us read text number 4. Mahavishnur Jagat Karta Mayaya Shrujati Yadha Tasya Avatara Evayam Advaita Acharya Ishvaraha. Lord Advaita Acharya is the incarnation of Mahavishnu, whose main function is to create the cosmic world through the actions of Maya. In text number 5. Advaitam Harinad Advaitat Acharyam Bhakti Samshanat Bhaktavataram Isham Tam Advaita Acharyam Ashraya. Because he is non-different from Hari, the Supreme Lord, he is called Advaita. Now he is giving the description of what it means. What does Advaita Acharya mean? So because he is non-different from Hari, he is called Advaita. And because he propagates the cult of devotion, he is called Acharya. He is the Lord and incarnation of the Lord's devotee. He is the Lord and the incarnation of the Lord's devotee. What does that mean? Yes, but no.
Incarnational Lord devotee is Mahavishnu.
Okay, incarnation of the Lord.
Yeah, he is the incarnation of the Lord's devotee. What does that mean? Huh?
Balram ji.
Even the form of a devotee, he is a Lord, but he is in the form of a devotee. He is not a devotee of the Lord.
So he is the
So who's the devotee whose incarnation is?
Lord Shiva.
Huh?
Balram.
What is the question?
Lord Shiva.
It says he is the Lord and the incarnation of the Lord's devotee.
Sadashiva.
Huh?
Shivji, Sadashiva. He is devotee of the Lord.
Mahavishnu.
So Lord's devotee is like
Who's the Lord's devotee in the Panchatattva?
Naradji?
Okay, let's look at this verse. Let's look at verse number 14 of the first chapter. Huh? 14. Panchatattvatkam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam. So who's Bhaktarupa? Bhaktarupa. Who's the Bhakta in this? Everyone? Yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Bhaktarupa. And then it says Bhakta Avataram. Who's the Bhakta Avataram? Advaita Acharya. Yes. Okay? You're clear? Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam. So who's the Bhakta Rupa in this Panchatattva? He comes in form of a devotee. And because he comes in form of a devotee, who is the devotee Swarup? No, devotee Swarup, Lord Nityananda. And Bhakta Avataram. You know who's the avatar of the Bhakta? Advaita Acharya.
Prabhuji, I'm sorry, but there was another verse, no, wherein you said Gurun is, Ish Bhaktan was Srivas Pandit, Isham was Krishna or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Isha Avatar was Advaita Acharya.
So where's that?
The first verse she's talking about.
The sixth Swarup in the first chapter.
Yeah, so he's the avatar. Lord Advaita Acharya, he's the avatar. He's described as he's the incarnation of the devotee. Okay? Yeah, but who's Mahavishnu coming from? Ultimately, who's in this Panchatattva, who's the devotee? Who's the Bhakta Rupa?
Is the Chaitanya
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay. And everyone else is also coming from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahavishnu is coming from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, okay. So this is a subtle point, don't get confused, but when you link all these verses together, then it becomes more clear. So sometimes it's, the context here is that, okay.
Here he's been addressed both as Lord and in the incarnation of Lord Sri Krishna.
Yeah, because he's the avatar. So isn't he Lord? You have any doubts about that? Huh? Okay. So, and he clarifies that. He says in the next verse, this is a very nice verse, let's read this together. Advaita Acharya Gosani Shakshata Ishvara Janhara Mahima Nahe Jivara Gochara. So Sri Advaita Acharya is indeed directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. Just because He is the incarnation He is referred doesn't mean that He is not. He is directly the Supreme. His glory is beyond the conception of ordinary living beings. And oh, some sound is coming. Okay. Let's try this one. Has it stopped? Huh? Okay. So in the next few verses, like another, you could say like another 20 verses, this whole identity and the role of Mahavishnu is going to be described. So let us quickly go through this because we've gone through it already in the previous chapter. So as we read in chapter 5, Mahavishnu performs all the functions of the creation of the universes. And Sri Advaita Acharya is the direct expansion. Tanahara Avatar Shakshat Advaita Acharya. And Mahavishnu, what does he do? He creates and he maintains with his external energy. He creates innumerable universes in his pastimes. And he enters into each universe as what? Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And it's explained that Sri Advaita Acharya is a plenary part of that Purusha and so is not non-different from him. In verse number 10. Indeed, Sri Advaita Acharya is not separate but is another form of the Purusha. So as we've already discussed that the Upadhan Karan, that Mahavishnu in the form of Advaita is the primary Upadhan Karan of this creation. So Mahavishnu glances and then the form that deals with the creative energy and making all these different things out of the Mahatattva and giving that life and creating so many multiple forms of creation, that's the role of Advaita Acharya. Advaita. So he helps in the pastimes of the Purusha with whose material energy and by whose will he creates innumerable universes. Let's read text number 12. Jagata Mangala Advaita Mangala Gunadhama Jagata Mangala Advaita Mangala Gunadhama Mangala Charit charitra sada mangala janra nama.
Mangala charitra sada mangala nama.
Being a reservoir of all auspicious attributes, Jagata Mangala Advaita. Mangala Gunadham, he is the embodiment of all auspiciousness. And his character, his characteristics, Mangala Charitra Sada, always, and his name, they're always auspicious. Okay. This is a very, very renowned verse that is often quoted even on Advaita Acharya's appearance day this year. Ramadha Prabhu spoke on this verse.
No.
Someone who's that? Put them on mute. Okay, she's put herself on mute. So Prabhupada writes, anyone who can view the all auspiciousness in the pastimes of Lord Vishnu also becomes auspicious simultaneously. Okay, so the more we realize their role, their presence in our lives, the more we understand their identity, then our lives will also become simultaneously auspicious. Therefore, since Lord Vishnu is the fountainhead of auspiciousness, anyone who is attracted by the devotional service of Lord Vishnu can render the greatest service to human society. That everyone wants auspiciousness in this world, every living entity. They want to experience auspiciousness. Sabka Jeevan Mangal Ho. Like this is what blessing we get. And who is the embodiment of this auspiciousness? Yes. Sri Advaita Acharya. And now Prabhupada writes an amazing, this, if you understand, if you are able to understand a little bit of this next few lines, it can really transform our lives. Prabhupada says, rejected persons of the material world who refuse to understand pure devotional service as the eternal function of the living entities and as actual liberation of the living being from the conditioned life, become bereft of all devotional service because of their poor fund of knowledge. You see the language that Prabhupada is using. Rejected persons of the material world. And another thing that, one thing that Srila Prabhupada constantly reminds us, and he reminds us again in these purports, that never think that because these Purusha avatars are involved so much with the material creation, that they are ever influenced by the material energy. Usually we think, people, if you're really deeply materially involved in something, you tend to get influenced by the material energy. But, Hare Krishna. But Prabhupada is saying that he is never to be considered material. All his activities are spiritual. Anyone who hears about and glorifies him becomes glorified himself, for such activities are free from all kinds of misfortune. One should not invest any material contamination or impersonalism in the Vishnu form. So sometimes you think Advaita, non-different, everything is one, right? Sometimes there may be a misconception that means to become impersonal. So Prabhupada is saying that no, this material contamination or impersonalism is never present in the Vishnu form. Everyone should try to understand the real identity of Lord Vishnu, for by such knowledge one can attain the highest stage of perfection. And he further describes that how Mahavishnu, he creates the entire material world with millions of his parts, energies and incarnations. And in the text 14 to 15, Srila Prabhupada explains, or Kaviraj Goswami explains what we have already discussed, that just as the external energy consists of two parts, the efficient cause and the material cause, Maya being the efficient cause and Pradhan being the material cause, so Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, assumes two forms to create the material world with the efficient and material causes. So we have already discussed this, and there is a 9-page purport to this verse, these two verses. And I'll not go into all the points because it will take many discussions to discuss this entire purport, but I'll give you the essence of what is being discussed in this purport. So Prabhupada, he starts off the purport by saying there are two kinds of research to find the original cause of creation. So two ways people presume or assume how creation takes place. So the first is the Supreme Lord is both the cause of both the material and spiritual worlds. So that is one proposition. The other conclusion, of course, is that this cosmic manifestation is caused by an inexplicable manifested void. So everything comes out of matter. Okay. Void. Basically, you see the arguments that how everything develops, that matter develops on its own. So everything that we see, all the diversity, all the different forms of life, including the Purusha, the living entity, according to that philosophy, everything is happening by what? By the movements of material nature, by matter. So there is no involvement of a supreme being in that creation. Okay. So two ways of understanding how all this has come about. And Prabhupada in these pages, these 9 pages, he discusses that how atheistic Sankhya philosophy, what do they really propose? That, what do they really, what is the essence of their philosophy? And their essence is that that everything happens. So he says in the purport, he says, philosophers who are subjectively engaged in the cosmic manifestation can appreciate only the wonderful energies of matter. Such philosophers accept the conception of God as a product of the material energy. According to their conclusions, the source of the energy is also a product of the energy. So what he's saying that that even living entities are ultimately produced by the action of matter. Okay. So that's their thesis. And they give different examples. They give example like one of the examples that's given is, one second, let me have a look. So they say that, look, the cow eats grass or a straw, and that grass gives it creates milk. So what's happening? Matter is generating its own different forms. The cow chewed on grass, the grass got transformed into milk, and we have this beautiful product, and that nourishes us. So where's God in it? So Prabhupada says, okay, why don't you feed the grass to some human beings? And will you get milk? Will you get that type of milk? Or feed the grass to another animal. Will milk come out? Then he gives another example. The Sankhya philosophy gives another example. And this is all being explained by Baladev Vidyabhushan in the purports. Right? So Prabhupada is sharing how he has explained Sankhya philosophy. So he gives another example that, the example of a pot and clay. He says everything moves on their own. Water is moving, and water moves, so it moves the clay in a certain way. Right? And over time, all these movements of matter, over time, what do? They produce different products. So matter on its own, by its own movement, is creating all these products of material nature. They also give an example of a tree, how the tree generates fruits and it's all happening on its own. So then Prabhupada also explains, he said, what if you just leave a bunch of bricks? Will that turn into a house? Do we have any experience that you take bricks and you pile them up and you say, okay, just go on with your work. And then when we come back after a few years, there'll be a beautiful house that's constructed. So we don't have that kind of experience. And this is what Prabhupada writes. He says, matter itself has no power to produce independently. The conclusion, therefore, is that matter which has no self-knowledge cannot be the cause of material creation. The ultimate creator is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is the distinct philosophy of the Gita, that matter comes from where? Spirit. And Prabhupada often describes knowledge in a very beautiful way. He says that, in fact, Krishna also describes in the 13th chapter, that knowledge means to know the distinction between matter and spirit. And not just stop there, and to know the source of both. So this is real knowledge. Understanding the difference between matter and spirit and the source of both. Then our knowledge becomes complete. And that's why we see as a civilization we're failing, because we become so one-dimensional. We just become obsessed so much with matter that we just completely ignore the spirit. And becoming so enamored by matter and its different transformations, and thinking to be the be-all and end-all of life, we just got completely consumed by this mundane energy. And the more we are consumed by it, the more meaningless our lives are becoming, the more difficult our lives are becoming. And there's so much trouble in the world, despite so-called technological progress and different types of innovations and high speed this and high speed that. But what about the condition of the human being? No one is thinking about it. I mean, there are people who are thinking about that, but the current is so strong towards this material obsession that no one takes all these spiritualists and the philosophers, and they don't take them so seriously now. They don't heed their warnings, they don't heed anything. Just go on. The show must go on. And so we all caught up in this show. And then when we read the Bhagavatam, when we read the Gita, when we read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is to break the shackles of this influence of this illusory energy, and to bring us to our senses that if Mahavishnu doesn't glance at that Pradhan, then what will happen? What will happen? Yeah, nothing will be active. Today we are proud of our resources, our abilities, our assets, but nothing would be generated. Nothing. And we see with this body, no matter how attractive this body is, when the soul goes, it's over. No matter how young and beautiful you may be, or how powerful you may be, the soul is gone, it's over, the show is over. The best of the medical doctors, relatives, friends, all your influence, all your position, all your titles, all your research work, education, nothing helps. The soul's gone, bye. And the more we read these type of these beautiful purports, these are Prabhupada's deep, deep realizations. Smashing all this, atheistic viewpoints, point by point. And trying to make us come to our senses. That who's the real controller? Who's the real source of everything? To help us to come to that point, so that we can understand that yes, our real benefit, just not for ourselves but for humanity, is that that recognition that we are a tiny, insignificant part in this whole creation. Yet the supreme source of everything, He accompanies us. He's waiting for us. He loves us unconditionally. He's giving us so many signs. So this is the beauty of God. That despite His great position, He is seeking to be controlled by this tiny, insignificant jiva. And controlled how? By re-establishing a loving relationship with the Lord. And by that love, God wants to come under the control of the living entity. This is God at, as I say, God at His best. So attractive. So in the next few verses, we just finished because we've already discussed these in great detail. So verses from 16 onwards, he elaborates on what we've already discussed. And then in 18 he says, although the Sankhya philosophy accepts the material ingredients as are the cause, the creation of the world never arises from dead matter. The Lord infuses the material ingredients with His own creative potency. Then by the power of the Lord, creation takes place. And that is the form of Advaita. He infuses the material ingredients with creative energy. Therefore, Advaita is the cause of creation. Let us recite verse number 20. Advaita rupe kore shakti shakti sanchara. Otova advaita hoy na mukhya karana. In the form of Advaita, he infuses the material ingredients with creative energy. Therefore, Advaita is the original cause of creation. And he creates millions and millions of universes. And by his expansion, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, he maintains each and every universe. And this Advaita, he is the principal limb of Narayan. And the Bhagavatam speaks of limb, anga and amsa, plenary portion. And Kaviraj Goswami explains that why is Advaita Acharya being described as a limb and not an amsa? That there is more intimacy. He describes in verse number 25. Why has Sri Advaita been called a limb and not a part? The reason is that limb implies greater intimacy. Verse number 26, let's recite this. Mahavishnuramsa Advaita Gunadhama Ishvare Abhedatini Advaita Purnanama. Sri Advaita, who is the reservoir of all virtues, is the main limb of Mahavishnu. So beautiful. His full name is Advaita, for he is identical in all respects with the Lord. Okay, we'll stop here today. So we have discussed his identity, we've discussed his role in the creation, and now we will, in the next 2 sessions, we will discuss his role as a preacher of bhakti and the great joy and the great position of being a devotee of the Lord. So again, this was a little technical section. Now it's over 26 verses, but in the next, I think there are 120 verses in this chapter. So the next 90 verses we'll cover, we try to cover 45 verses next time, and then another 45 verses in the next, the third session. And we hope to complete this before Gaur Purnima. Okay. So welcome Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, welcome. So if you have any questions or realizations you would like to share, we can do that for another 5-10 minutes, and then we have Kirtan by Prabhuji. Yes, Rum.
So Prabhuji, the point which you were mentioning that why do we need to understand about the 4 Shavdas, and then you said that the more understanding we have, the more we understand the mercy of the Lord into our lives.
Yes.
So can you explain it further? Because my understanding was that whatever chanting or whatever process we are following, it is to develop the servitude attitude, to become a servant of the Lord. But then the relationship is, that context never comes in, that Vishnu and Push of Das and all this, because that is always a service to the Radha Krishna deities. So how do we understand this?
Yeah, so who is Lord Vishnu?
Ultimately it is Lord Krishna expanding himself.
Yeah, so the more we understand Lord Vishnu, we actually our love for Krishna increases. Because we realize Krishna is not just someone who's just having, playing around. What is his potency? And how his potency is expanding throughout multiple, countless universes. That yes, we are looking at Krishna as a little coward boy. But what's his potency? So this question was also asked last time. There was one devotee who asked that, okay, we are supposed to have ananyata towards Krishna. Yes? Krishna and only Krishna. So is Lord Vishnu different from Krishna? Yes and no. But what's more? More yes or more no?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
More no.
Yes.
What do you think?
More yes.
More yes. So Krishna, we tend to understand Krishna as an individual isolated entity. But the way Shastra describes Krishna, so whenever there's, when there's the description about the glories of God, why is all this discussed? They should have just put it aside. They could have just discussed, Krishna plays the flute, he dances with the gopis, he plays with his coward boys, he has, he runs around, mothers chasing him, and just deal with that.
I mean, that aspect I could understand that, but that mercy part.
The mercy is that he is by the Purusha avatars, this whole creation is being maintained, generated. So it's Krishna, but in the expansion, in the form of the Purusha avatar. So yes, we appreciate Krishna, Radha Krishna, but we also understand Krishna with his full potency, not only in his house, but also how he acts, his presence in the world, in the office. How do we perceive Krishna's presence in the world? Like when we see something very private, where does it come from? So the way so we have to think of Krishna as he's a multi-dimensional personality. He's not some isolated person sitting somewhere and just playing around. But he has different aspects that are acting different capacities with expansion. And we should be conscious of that. Then our appreciation for Krishna increases. My God, what a personality. He's just playing around, but he's got all these expansions, he's got all these forms. He's doing everything perfectly. Krishna is making sure that we are taken care of in every aspect. This is what we want to do. Why do I need to think about the super soul? Is the super soul important? Is the super soul not different from God inside? So Prabhupada, every time he describes God, he always gives the example of a king. King is never alone. King means his praja, his assets, his resources, his abilities. So when we think of Krishna's abilities, we think think of the Purusha avatar. You think of Lord Nityananda. You think of the Chaturvyuha. You think of all these countless universes and how everything is so perfect. If we don't mess around with it, everything happens beautifully. The more we mess with it, the more we get ourselves into a messy situation. That's what we have become. That's why we don't have clean air, we don't have clean water. And I was just reading that the water that we are consuming is much more than what we are replenishing. So what's going to happen?
Scarcity.
There's going to be some serious scarcity of water in the future. I remember reading one article in the economic, uh, not the Economic Times, but Economist, many years ago, saying that the future wars will happen around water. They're predicting many years later, like I think almost a decade ago, I must have read that out.
There is a famous scientist who says, his name is E.O. Wilson. He said that if only one species removed from this earth, then everything will be on the planet. And that is human being.
Seriously, we have a mango tree outside our house. It's been there for the last 20 years. I've never watered it. I haven't done anything to it. But every summer, it gives the sweetest mangoes. I mean, this material world is like the most advanced open sky, roofless factory ever anyone can conceive in this world. I mean, just think about it. The material nature is a miracle. Just look at these flowers. Look at the fragrance. Look at the richness of this earth. What we see just as dirt and we think, mitti ho, mitti.
In the first chapter and the first chapter, we learned about how Krishna is the source of Narayana and Krishna is the source of Narayana, all portions. But like other sampradayas of the state, most particularly of South, it is only the Shri Sampradaya of 95%. And they say Narayana is the source of Krishna. I want to understand, like Prabhupada said, we can intermingle or we can go to these four sampradayas. I want to know if those Sri Sampradaya or those who say that Narayana is the name and they don't take Krishna's name at all in the whole that side, the whole South India. I want to know their scriptures or their source of information is limited with the Narayana Suruji as we are learning in teaching in the very deep philosophy and individually we are learning every source or every portions and expansions, everything we are learning individually. So it comes to my mind, I want to know whether they are limited with those scriptures or those source of knowledge. That they don't know about all such things, Prabhuji, what we are learning here and in our temple and everything. For us, it's a Krishna is absolute true. And for them, it's not there. In the future, Balaji and everything, for them, it's a Narayana. So I want to know these scriptures are limited, Prabhuji. Though it's one of the Sampradayas, Sri Sampradaya comes in one of the
So
Sampradayas.
I won't say that it is a bona fide sampradaya. Yes. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave us and his followers, especially the six Goswamis, they extracted much more information from many different scriptures and put it all together for our better understanding and a deeper understanding. So I don't know honestly much about the different sampradayas except in a general level. And I don't really know their practices and so I'm not I can find out for you. But the thing is that we should respect them because they are bona fide sampradaya, and we should focus on what we have gotten. And we've gotten so much amazing detail. Kaviraj Goswami is giving us so much amazing detail.
And in that, in our Chennai temple also, whenever the festivals are there, it is there. We are surrounded by Shri Sampradayas because there are majority of Shri Sampradaya devotees. And they do come to our temples and everything. And but they say Narayana, Narayana. Like
Yes.
they recite like Narayana, Narayana, then we recite to our Shri Krishna. So that makes my mind so
So they appreciate the Lord's majesty more. God in a majestic form. So an awe and reverence. And actually even our deity worship should be done in that mood until the devotees really progress in their devotion. So even say our deity worship, for most of us, until we are very, very evolved in our spiritual journey, we should also worship in a spirit of awe and veneration. And only when we become really purified, and then we are we become free from anarthas, and we get more taste, ruchi, then only the mode of worship changes naturally. But in the beginning, because we are neophytes and we have material conditionings, we cannot assume to worship the deity like informally and in some sweet mode, and so it has to be done properly.
Somebody asked similar kind of question because I also had so the answer was I even don't remember. His answer was like one scripture which is commonly seen accepted by all Christians together is Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam is presenting to all Christians together tries to achieve that loving devotion towards Krishna. The only ways are different, and then ways triggers Upaka or Krishna are form of Lord. I don't know that it was somewhere
Yeah, I don't know exactly what their end goal is. Whether it's to go to the Vaikuntha planet. I don't know. Honestly, I'm so like it's overwhelming how much knowledge we have, how much little I understand of what we have. So my focus is always trying to understand. Okay, कुछ तो समझे जो हमें मिला है. So, but it's good to know. Do you want to add something? Yeah. Would you have to-
I think, I mean, so we are very lucky in the sense that from what you're explaining, we have an organization in which we are represented. Sri Sampradaya is a Sampradaya that we're talking about. It's not represented by an organization, right? Right? It's not an organization. Sri Sampradaya is like Brahma Sampradaya, Sri Sampradaya. Like that, in Brahma Sampradaya, there can be many branches. There are many branches. Just like that, Sri Sampradaya also many people follow many things. We don't know what is happening from outside. People when they see ISKCON, they say, "Arey, paisa America based." They say that, right? But inside you find different things. Just like that, when we go inside, I personally know many Sri Sampradaya people who have more love for Krishna than most of maybe preliminary Gaudiya Vaishnavas like myself, right? They love Ranganath. Ranganath is lying down. He is Vishnu, right? But there are if you go there and speak to the devotees there who are really practicing, not from the outside, not just the most vocal ones, but really practicing. You ask them, they will tell you the Madhurya mode of Ranganath, pastimes of Ranganath, the deity. They will tell you that. They will tell you the Sakya, Sakya Rati pastimes of Ranganath himself. So it's not, but obviously they go through the route of, as Prabhuji mentioned, through the route of majesty, uh, which is amazing, which is great, right? Everybody has that mood, and we should stick to whatever, as Prabhuji is saying, we should stick to our mood and take one boat. But the boat they're taking, it doesn't mean, as Prabhuji also mentioned, doesn't mean that they don't know their scriptures are limited. They're listening to Bhagavatam, they're reading, right? They know Krishna and all of that. Um, and if you really speak to the real people who are really deep into it, they will never say Narayana is the source of Krishna. They will not say that. They will say Krishna is the original. Yes, he is the Adi Krishna. But this is the route that I'm taking. This is the opulence of him is what I am connecting with. Just like Murari Gupta Hanuman, Krishna comes in front. Does Hanuman not know that Krishna is the source of Ram? Hanuman knows. Yeah, but what does he like? Ram. He likes Ram. That's his mood. Just like that. Just wanted to add that.
Yes, thank you very much.
And there's so many devotees in all over the world. I know so many Sri Sampradaya devotees who turn me to this side, and they really appreciate Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's difficult joke, but they do.
Even Prabhuji, you see that the story of Goddess Padmavati and Lord Venkatesh is the most celebrated. And in that form, the Lord Venkatesh is not in his magnanimous form. As he is a simple, I think the mother of Venkatesh, she went to Padmavati's father and they called to do. This was celebrated thing, not some magnanimous thing. But always which the devotees relish is such kind of pastime.
So yes, thank you very much. Thank you. And, the good news is we are past now. All the technical descriptions. And now the next few sessions are very, very special verses from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And where we will get a glimpse into all the characters, all the key characters, including Srimati Radharani, Mother Yashoda, all the different cowherd boys, Lord Shiva, everyone. There's going to be no one who's going to be left out. So it's coming in the next 20 years. So just so we have
Just confirming. We have heard that the glance of Lord Vishnu is Sadashiv. Is it correct? The glance of Lord Vishnu.
no, don't get. No, it's not that. Glance of Mahavishnu is Mahavishnu's glance.
Actually, I was attending a lecture, training session on DYS.
I don't have it here. It's not mentioned here, so let's not discuss. Sadashiv is another great personality, but one of the most difficult personalities to understand. So let's not complicate everyone. Just keep it simple for now, and I'll deal with that later between us. Okay. Uh, so I'll start the next section with next session with that. So today we're very fortunate to have all of you. And day before yesterday was dear Sunil Prabhu's birthday as well. And then a few days before that was Narayan Mataji's